Okay, so we know I love learning. Tariffs has been my new, I don't want to say obsession, but like I'm trying to understand it. And the more that I try to understand it, the process is teaching, like see, teach, do, see, do, teach, whatever it is. Anyway, just the basic understanding of tariffs. Tariffs is a tax, and the tariff in question is for imported goods from China. So what that means is that companies, US based companies, will use Apple because that's one of the large ones. Apple, when they import products from China, they're going to get the number I saw was 60%, a 60% tax on products imported from China. So part of this tariff plan, and this is coming from my brother, like a financial, so I was able to ask real pointed questions and he was able to explain things so I could understand. So Apple, they're trying to get like the iPhone from China. There's a 60% tax on that. And he said the default with any business, when taxes go up, he said even the government does it. When taxes go up, the business doesn't take a loss. They pass that on to the consumer. So instead of the iPhone being $1,100, it would increase to $1,800. He said normally when there's a tax increase, it's 5 to 10%, and you rarely even notice that the price is going up. But when that compounds on each other, obviously you notice it. So my question was, what happens to the businesses in China that are selling products to the United States? How does that work? And he said, absolutely, tariff still works. And I was like, okay. So it's starting to make a little bit more sense. Okay, so we want people to buy more products in the United States, so we're going to charge China more money to import them here so they don't do it. So you're forced to buy the products in the United States. Or not forced, but led that direction. I was like, okay, I get that. I understand that. Got it. Okay. But what about that $1,800 iPhone? And what he said was the way that this works, the way that it unfolds is the prior tariff plan that happened with Trump before COVID, it had a clause in it for Apple or large companies, I guess in general, that they didn't have to pay the tariff for a year. As long as they were making building companies in the United States, building production companies in the United States. As long as they were doing that, they didn't have to pay it. And he said that this new tariff plan, if it goes into action, is going to likely have the same clause in it, that if you are actively building a production company in the United States, you don't have to pay the tariff for a certain amount of time. Because he said nothing happens overnight. And I was like, oh, okay, I can follow all of this. And I was like, what about Temu? Like, how are they? What about that? And he said that they found a loophole in the tariff where you don't have to pay a tariff if the item is under a certain either size or weight. Look who's learning how to edit. So a little piece of that got cut out. What happens is, and this is my loose understanding of it. So the iPhone goes up $1,100 to $1,800. Consumers are like, you know what? That new iPhone looks a lot like the old iPhone. They're going to make their iPhones last longer instead of paying that $1,800. And not everybody, it's not a blanket statement. This is just how this is meant to work and how it's been historically it has worked. So the iPhone goes from $1,100 to $1,800. Sales are going to go down. The share is going to go down. The investors are going to get upset. Apple's going to start losing profits. And they're going to have to figure out what to do next. And like I told him, when you're only being presented with a little, and my rendition of the story is far from what he said. I'm just grasping it with my core knowledge here, barely holding on by a thread. But what I told him was, if you're only presented with a little bit of the whole picture, like if someone's like, oh, there's a new tariff plan and it's going to make your iPhone go from $1,100 to $1,800, you'd be like, nope, don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want that plan. I'm not for it. But if someone told you we're going to increase the price of the iPhone to force companies in the United States to change their production from overseas to in the United States to make things American made, so the price will be cheaper, I don't know. It makes me want to look into it more, at least, like fact check some of this stuff.